There are days when the mind behaves like a hand gripping a rope that is burning through the skin. You know the rope is hurting you. You know holding tighter will not change what is happening at the other end. And still, something inside refuses to release. Perhaps it is an unanswered message resting on your phone. Perhaps it is a doctor's appointment you cannot stop imagining. Perhaps it is your grown child making choices you do not understand. Perhaps it is a relationship changing in a direction you never wanted. Or perhaps it is nothing dramatic at all. Just the quiet pressure of ordinary life. Bills on the kitchen table. Cold coffee beside a laptop. A porch light left on for someone who is late. A ceiling fan turning above you at 2 in the morning while the mind rehearses conversations that may never happen. We often believe peace will come when we finally gain control, when the other person apologizes, when the future becomes clear, when the body stops aging, when the family becomes easier, when the world behaves fairly. But life rarely offers that kind of agreement. And so the strange truth is this: the more desperately we try to control what cannot be controlled, the more controlled we become by fear. You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. Letting go is often misunderstood. It does not mean that you stop caring. It does not mean that you become passive, weak, careless, or indifferent. It does not mean that you allow people to harm you. It does not mean that you abandon responsibility or pretend that painful things do not matter. Letting go means recognizing the boundary between what belongs to your hands and what is not. Your words belong to your hands. Your intentions belong to your hands. Your next honest action belongs to your hands. But another person's reaction does not. The timing of life does not. The past does not. The weather, the market, the aging of those you love, the judgment of strangers, and the uncertainty of tomorrow do not. Much of our suffering comes from standing at this boundary and refusing to accept it. A woman named Ellen sat in an empty kitchen after midnight, staring at a silent phone. Her son had not called in 3 weeks. They had argued over something small that had carried the weight of many larger things. He accused her of trying to manage his life. She told him he was ungrateful. He left angry. She had sent messages, then longer messages, then messages explaining the earlier messages. Every night, she checked whether he had read them. Every morning, she promised herself she would not check again. But anxiety has a way of turning a small screen into an altar. She wanted peace, yet she kept feeding the part of the mind that believed peace depended on his reply. She could not force her son to answer. She could not force him to understand her intentions. She could not force the relationship to return to what it had been. What she could do was examine her own heart. Had she listened? Had she respected his adulthood? Had her care become control? Was there an apology she could offer without demanding an immediate reward? One morning, Ellen wrote a final message. She did not defend herself. She did not remind him of all she had done. She simply said, "I love you. I am sorry for the ways my fear became pressure. I am here when you are ready." Then she placed the phone face down and made breakfast. The pain did not disappear. Her son did not call that morning. But something changed. She had stepped out of the impossible task of controlling his response and returned to the possible task of caring for her own conduct. In Buddhist teaching, this is not surrender to helplessness. It is the beginning of wisdom. The mind often confuses influence with control. You may influence a conversation through patience, but you cannot control how the other person hears you. You may influence your health through sleep, movement, food, medical care, and wise choices, but you cannot control every condition of the body. You may influence your future through effort, but you cannot control every event that will meet you there. Wisdom asks us to act fully where action is possible and to release the demand that action guarantee a particular result. This is difficult because the mind loves guarantees. It wants a contract with life. If I am good, nothing terrible should happen. If I meditate, I should not feel anxious. If I forgive, the relationship should heal. If I work hard, I should succeed. If I love someone deeply, they should stay. But Buddhist practice is not a bargain with life. Kind people can still become ill. Loving parents can still lose children. Honest workers can still be treated unfairly. Mindful people can still make mistakes. Meditation does not remove uncertainty. Compassion does not prevent loss. Practice changes the way we meet what cannot be controlled. It does not make us exempt from being human. Long ago, a farmer lived near the border of a small kingdom. One evening, his only horse escaped through a broken fence and disappeared into the hills. The neighbors came to offer sympathy. "What terrible luck," they said. "Without the horse, how will you work your field?" The farmer looked toward the empty road and replied, "Perhaps." Several days later, the horse returned, bringing 3 wild horses with it. The neighbors hurried back. "What wonderful luck," they said. "Now you are wealthy." The farmer replied, "Perhaps." The farmer's son tried to train one of the wild horses. He was thrown to the ground and broke his leg. The neighbors shook their heads. "What terrible luck." The farmer said, "Perhaps." Soon after, soldiers arrived in the village to take every able-bodied young man into war. The farmer's son was left behind because of his broken leg. "What wonderful luck," the neighbors said. Again, the farmer answered, "Perhaps." The story is not asking us to become emotionally cold. It is asking us to be humble about our judgments. We often label an event too quickly. Good, bad, success, failure, blessing, disaster, but we rarely see the whole road. The opportunity you desperately wanted may have led you into a life that did not fit you. The rejection you could not accept may have protected you from a deeper wound. The delay that made you furious may have given you time to see what you were too hurried to notice. This does not mean every hardship secretly brings a reward. Some losses are simply losses. Some experiences leave scars. The wisdom is not that everything happens for a reason we will eventually understand. The wisdom is that our first interpretation is not always the final truth. When you stop insisting that you already know what every event means, the mind becomes less rigid. You begin to meet life as it unfolds instead of fighting the story you created about how it was supposed to unfold. One of the greatest obstacles to letting go is attachment. Attachment is not the same as love. Love says, "May you be well." Attachment says, "You must remain as I need you to be." Love allows another person to be a human being. Attachment turns them into a source of security. Love can be present with change. Attachment demands permanence from what is impermanent. A man named Robert cared for his wife through several years of illness. He organized medications, drove to appointments, learned the language of test results, and slept lightly so he could hear her call from the next room. He loved her deeply, but beneath his love was a demand he rarely admitted. She must get better. Life must return to normal. The doctors must find the answer. His efforts were sincere, but his mind was living in a constant argument with reality. When her condition worsened, Robert felt he had failed. He blamed himself for not noticing symptoms sooner. He blamed the doctors. He blamed the hospital. He blamed the food they had eaten years before. The mind will sometimes prefer guilt to helplessness because guilt creates the illusion that we had control. If it was my fault, then perhaps I could have prevented it. If I had chosen differently, perhaps none of this would have happened. But responsibility and control are not the same. There may be things we need to learn from. There may be mistakes we need to admit. Yet not every painful outcome is evidence that someone failed. In a quiet hospital hallway, a nurse once sat beside Robert. She did not offer a spiritual explanation. She did not tell him to stay positive. She said, "You have been trying to carry the outcome. That part was never yours to carry." He began to cry, not because the words solved anything, but because they named the burden. He could care for his wife. He could hold her hand. He could ask questions. He could advocate for her. He could rest when another person offered help. But he could not command the body to heal. He could not negotiate with time. He could not love someone so perfectly that death would forget them. A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. For Robert, the step was allowing himself to sit beside his wife without turning every moment into a problem to solve. Some afternoons they said very little. Sunlight moved across the hospital blanket. A cart rolled down the hallway. Someone laughed softly at the nurse's station. His wife slept, and Robert began to understand that presence was not a failure of action. Sometimes presence is the deepest action available. Another obstacle is resentment. Resentment promises that if you keep holding the pain, the person who caused it will somehow feel the weight. But often they do not. They continue with their day while you carry the conversation into the shower, the car, the office, the grocery store, and the hours before sleep. You imagine what you should have said. You build speeches they may never hear. You replay the moment until the wound becomes part of your identity. Forgiveness is often misunderstood in the same way letting go is misunderstood. Forgiveness does not require you to trust someone who is unsafe. It does not require you to return to a harmful relationship. It does not erase consequences. It does not mean what happened was acceptable. Forgiveness may simply mean that you stop allowing the injury to occupy every room of your mind. A woman named Marissa spent 12 years angry at her older sister. Their conflict began when their mother became ill. Marissa felt she carried the responsibility alone while her sister visited rarely and offered advice from a distance. After their mother died, grief hardened into blame. At family gatherings, the sisters spoke politely but without warmth. At home, Marissa rehearsed the evidence against her sister. The missed appointments, the unanswered calls, the excuses. She believed that releasing her anger would betray her mother. Then one Sunday, Marissa found an old voicemail. Her mother's voice was weak but cheerful. She was thanking Marissa for bringing soup. At the end, she said, "Please do not let caring for me make your heart hard." Marissa sat on the edge of the bed and listened again. Her mother was not telling her to deny what happened. She was not telling her to pretend the burden had been equal. She was reminding her that pain can continue producing pain long after the original event has ended. This is how karma may be understood for reflection. Not as punishment delivered by the universe. Not as a simple system where good people receive comfort and bad people receive suffering. Karma is the way intention, repetition, words, habits, and actions shape the mind and influence future conditions. When resentment is rehearsed daily, the mind becomes skilled at resentment. When anger is repeated, anger becomes easier to access. When compassion is practiced, compassion becomes more available. When we pause before speaking, that pause becomes a path the mind can find again. Marissa did not call her sister and declare that everything was forgiven. She began more quietly. She stopped telling the story to every new person she met. She stopped checking her sister's life for evidence that it was unfairly easy. She wrote down what she had needed and never received. Then she wrote down the boundaries she wanted now. Months later, she invited her sister to meet at a small cafe. The conversation was imperfect. Her sister became defensive. Marissa felt the old heat rise in her chest. But she did not attack. She said, "I am not asking you to agree with every memory. I am telling you what the experience did to me. I want a relationship, but not one where I have to deny my pain." That was a sign of inner change. Not the disappearance of emotion, but the ability to speak without becoming the emotion. You may notice this change in your own life. Someone says something sharp, and you feel the familiar reaction begin. The chest tightens. The mind prepares its weapons. But now there is a small space, a single breath, a moment in which you see the anger before the anger speaks through you. That small space may not look impressive. No one will give you an award for it, but a life can change inside that space. Before, you reacted immediately. Now you may wait. Before, every feeling became an instruction. Now, you understand that a feeling can be present without becoming your next action. This does not mean you suppress anger. Suppressed anger does not disappear. It often goes underground and returns as bitterness, exhaustion, or self-judgment. Awareness allows anger to be felt without giving it complete authority. You might say, "I am too upset to continue this conversation wisely. I will return when I am calmer." That is not avoidance. It can be restraint. You might leave a harmful situation. That is not failure. It can be responsibility. You might seek therapy, medical support, legal guidance, or help from trusted people. Spiritual reflection does not replace practical care. The mind may become quieter through meditation, but meditation does not require you to remain where you are being harmed. Another obstacle is the illusion of control. This illusion often wears the clothing of responsibility. You may tell yourself, "If I do not worry, I am not caring." A parent lies awake imagining every danger their child might face. A manager checks every detail because no one can do it correctly. A partner studies every change in tone, trying to prevent abandonment. A person waiting for medical results searches the internet until fear has 1,000 new names. Worry feels active. It creates the sensation of doing something. But much of the time, worry is the mind walking in circles and calling it preparation. There is useful planning, and there is repetitive suffering. Useful planning leads toward an action. Repetitive suffering returns to the same question without creating a new step. Ask yourself gently, is there something I can do now? Perhaps you can make the appointment. Ask the question. Save the money. Have the conversation. Lock the door. Take the medication as prescribed. Apologize. Leave. Stay. Rest. Complete one necessary task. But when there is no action available, the mind may need to practice not solving. A retired teacher named Daniel learned this while waiting for test results. He had always been the person others relied on. He planned ahead. He kept documents organized. He arrived early. He believed uncertainty could be reduced through careful preparation. Then a scan revealed something the doctor could not immediately explain. More tests were needed. For 10 days, Daniel lived between possibilities. He searched symptoms late into the night. He imagined treatments. He pictured funerals. He worried about his wife living alone. He worried about the house. He worried about the dog. He worried about worries he had not yet discovered. On the fourth night, he walked into the living room and saw his wife asleep on the couch with the television still on. A bowl of popcorn rested on the floor. One lamp filled the room with soft yellow light. Daniel looked at her and realized he had already left his life. His body was standing in the room, but his mind was living in a future that had not arrived. He turned off the television. He covered her with a blanket. Then he sat in the chair beside her and took 3 conscious breaths. Not to guarantee a good result, not to remove fear, simply to return. The first breath brought him back to the room. The second brought him back to his body. The third reminded him that this moment, at least, was here. The results came later. They required treatment, but not the future he had imagined. Daniel still felt fear. He still asked questions. He still made plans. But he began to see that uncertainty did not only exist in the hospital. It had always existed. The diagnosis had simply removed the curtain. We live as though tomorrow has signed an agreement with us. It has not. This may sound frightening, but it can also bring tenderness. When you understand that a family meal is not guaranteed to happen forever, you may listen differently. When you understand that your parent's voice will not always be available, you may make the call. When you understand that your child will not always be small, you may put down the phone. When you understand that your own strength will change, you may stop postponing every form of rest. Acceptance of uncertainty does not make life meaningless. It makes the ordinary more visible. A cup of tea, a clean bed, a loyal friend, a morning when the body hurts less, a familiar coat by the door, someone asking whether you arrived home safely. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. A new opportunity does not guarantee peace. More money does not guarantee peace. A spiritual teacher does not guarantee transformation. You can enter a beautiful temple and carry the same old anger inside. You can move to a new city and bring every fear with you. You can earn more and become more afraid of losing. You can listen to wise teachings for years while continuing to avoid the one honest conversation your life requires. The door may be shown. The path may be described. But practice happens in ordinary choices. The next sign of change may be that you need less approval. This does not mean you stop caring how your actions affect others. It means you no longer abandon your values every time someone is disappointed. A woman named June spent most of her life being easy to need. She said yes quickly. She answered calls at any hour. She hosted every holiday. She covered shifts. She loaned money she could not afford to lose. People praised her kindness, but much of her kindness was fear. She feared being called selfish. She feared conflict. She feared that love would disappear if she became inconvenient. By 62, June was exhausted and quietly resentful. One afternoon, her daughter asked her to take care of the grandchildren for an entire weekend with almost no notice. June had been looking forward to visiting an old friend. The familiar answer rose automatically. Of course. Then she paused. She felt guilt before she had even spoken. She noticed it. She breathed. And she said, "I cannot do the whole weekend. I can help Saturday afternoon." Her daughter sounded irritated. June's heart raced. For several hours, she wanted to call back and surrender the boundary. But she did not. That evening, she sat on a park bench and watched leaves move across the path. Nothing terrible happened. Her daughter remained her daughter. The world did not end because June had a limit. This was not a dramatic spiritual awakening. It was a calm boundary, and a calm boundary may be a form of compassion. It protects the relationship from the resentment that grows when kindness is forced. It protects the body from endless overextension. It teaches others that love is not the same as unlimited access. You may know you are changing when you can disappoint someone without immediately deciding you are a bad person. You may know you are changing when you can hear criticism without making it your identity. You may know you are changing when you can ask, "Is there truth here?" without accepting every accusation. Another sign appears when you stop obeying every thought. A thought says, "They do not respect you." You notice it. A thought says, "You will fail." You notice it. A thought says, "This feeling will never end." You notice it. The practice is not to replace every difficult thought with a beautiful thought. The practice is to see thought as thought, a mental event, a passing formation, not a command from the deepest truth. Imagine sitting beside a highway at night. Cars pass in both directions. Some are loud. Some carry bright headlights. Some disappear quickly. You do not need to chase each car to discover where it is going. Thoughts can be met this way. There is fear. There is memory. There is planning. There is self-judgment. There is the old conversation again. You are not required to enter every vehicle. Meditation may help you recognize this. Even 10 quiet minutes can reveal how little control we have over what appears in the mind and how much choice we may have in whether we continue feeding it. Sit comfortably. Feel the body supported. Allow the breath to move naturally. When thought appears, notice it without punishment. Return gently. Not because returning makes you a good meditator. Return because returning is the practice. You may return 100 times. That is not 100 failures. That is 100 moments of awareness. Another sign of change is the ability to rest without guilt. Many people do not know how tired they are because they have made exhaustion part of their identity. They feel worthy when they are needed. They feel safe when they are productive. They believe stillness must be earned, so they clean the kitchen when the body asks to sit. They answer one more email. They watch one more news report. They carry work into bed. Then they wonder why the mind will not become quiet on command. Rest is not laziness. Avoidance can look like rest, but true rest restores the ability to meet responsibility. Sometimes the wisest action is sleep. Sometimes it is turning off the phone. Sometimes it is asking someone else to help. Sometimes it is admitting that you cannot continue at the same pace. A peaceful life is not a life in which nothing difficult happens. It may be a life in which you stop making difficulty harder through unnecessary resistance. You still pay the bill. You still attend the appointment. You still have the conversation. But you do one necessary thing at a time, not the entire future at once. Another sign is that gratitude begins appearing in ordinary places. Not forced gratitude. Not the kind that shames you for feeling pain because someone else has less. Real gratitude can sit beside sorrow. You can miss someone and still notice the rain stopping. You can feel anxious and still appreciate warm food. You can be grieving and still hear a bird outside the window. Gratitude does not cancel suffering. It prevents suffering from becoming the only thing you can see. A widower named Samuel kept his wife's blue cup in the kitchen cabinet for 2 years after she died. He could not use it. He could not throw it away. Every time he saw it, grief rose. One morning, he took the cup down and made tea. He sat by the window as morning light entered the room. He cried. Then he smiled. The cup was painful because the love had been real. For the first time, he allowed the memory to be both sorrow and gratitude. He did not let go of his wife. He let go of the demand that remembering her must only hurt. This is another form of release. You do not have to remove every memory. You may need to change how you hold it. With both hands clenched, even a beautiful thing becomes painful. With the hands open, memory can rest without being imprisoned. Compassion also changes as we let go. At first, compassion may be mixed with a desire for reward. We help and hope to be appreciated. We forgive and hope the person changes. We give and hope life gives back. But compassion is a way of living, not a ritual for receiving rewards. A private kind act may never be noticed. An apology may not repair the relationship. A person you forgive may never understand what it cost you. Still, your intention matters. Repetition matters. Responsibility matters. Awareness matters. These shape the heart. This is karma in the intimate sense. Every repeated action leaves a path. The more often you walk a path, the easier it becomes to walk again. If you repeatedly speak harshly, harshness becomes familiar. If you repeatedly pause, the pause becomes familiar. If you repeatedly tell the truth gently, honesty becomes less frightening. If you repeatedly return to resentment, resentment becomes home. The practice is not perfection. The practice is choosing which paths you want to strengthen. You will still make mistakes. You may raise your voice after promising not to. You may return to an old relationship you knew was harmful. You may spend another night worrying about what you cannot control. Do not turn awareness into another weapon against yourself. Self-judgment is often control wearing a spiritual mask. It says, I should be beyond this by now. But who decided the heart must heal according to a schedule? You may understand a teaching and still struggle to live it. You may set a boundary and later feel guilty. You may forgive one day and feel angry again the next. Inner change is rarely a straight road. It is more like returning to the same path in different weather. The important question is not, did I ever fall back? The question is, can I notice sooner and return more wisely? Perhaps today, letting go means writing down one fear and placing a line beneath it. Above the line, write what you can do. Below the line, write what you cannot command. Perhaps you can call the doctor. You cannot control the result. Perhaps you can speak honestly. You cannot control whether you are understood. Perhaps you can apologize. You cannot force forgiveness. Perhaps you can prepare carefully. You cannot remove every surprise. Perhaps you can love someone. You cannot prevent them from changing. Let the line be clear. Not cold. Not rigid. Clear. Then choose one action from above the line. Only one. Complete it. After that, allow yourself to stop. Another practice is to take 3 conscious breaths before answering when you feel attacked. The first breath is for the body. The second is for the wound. The third is for the choice. You may still need to speak firmly. You may still need to say no. You may still need to leave. But let your action come from clarity rather than the first flame of reaction. Another practice is the delayed phone call. There may be someone you have been meaning to call. An aging parent. A sibling. A loyal friend. Not every relationship can or should be repaired. Some distance is necessary for safety. But sometimes the delay is not wisdom. Sometimes it is pride. Sometimes we wait for the perfect words until there is no longer time to speak them. You do not need a perfect speech. You may simply say, I have been thinking of you. Or I am sorry. Or I do not know how to fix everything, but I do not want silence to make the decision for us. There may also be a conversation you should not return to. Letting go can mean forgiving without returning to abuse. It can mean wishing someone freedom while protecting your own. It can mean releasing hatred while maintaining distance. Boundaries and compassion are not enemies. Sometimes the most compassionate response is to stop participating in a pattern that harms everyone involved. As change begins, protect it. Reduce unnecessary noise. Not every opinion deserves entrance into your mind. Not every message requires an immediate answer. Not every argument needs your participation. You may discover that peace grows when you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You may discover that the silent phone is not always rejection. Sometimes it is simply silence. You may discover that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. You may discover that uncertainty is uncomfortable but survivable. You may discover that the mind can produce fear without fear being prophecy. A peaceful later life is more than financial success. Money can provide safety, treatment, food, shelter, and options. These matter. But a peaceful later life may also mean fewer regrets, honest relationships, manageable needs, a stable home, enough health to enjoy the morning, someone to call, the ability to sleep, the willingness to apologize, the freedom to remember without fighting every memory, a mind that no longer treats every change as an emergency. To protect peace, practice honesty, gratitude, humility, boundaries, restraint, forgiveness, responsibility, and compassion. Not as commandments, as supports. Honesty keeps the heart from dividing itself. Gratitude keeps pain from becoming the entire sky. Humility reminds us that we do not see the whole road. Boundaries prevent love from becoming self-abandonment. Restraint creates space between feeling and action. Forgiveness releases the demand that the past become different. Responsibility returns us to what is actually ours. Compassion keeps wisdom from becoming cold. Tonight, there may still be something unresolved. A decision, a conversation, a diagnosis, a financial worry, a relationship you cannot repair alone. Do what belongs to you. Prepare where preparation is possible. Ask for help where help is needed. Seek therapy, medical care, legal support, or practical guidance when the situation calls for it. Then notice the moment when action has ended and mental repetition has begun. You may say quietly, "I have done what I can for now." The mind may object. It may present another possibility, another disaster, another argument. You do not need to defeat the mind. You can acknowledge it. I hear the fear. I understand why you want control. But there is nothing more to do tonight. Then return to the room. Feel the chair. Listen to the rain. Notice the low sound of the refrigerator. See the porch lamp through the window. Let the body be where it is. Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. You may not be able to stop the storm, but you can stop opening every window. You may not be able to change the past, but you can stop asking the past to become a different past. You may not be able to control another person, but you can stop abandoning yourself in the effort. You may not know what tomorrow will bring, but you can meet this breath without demanding that it reveal the future. There is a quiet strength in this, not the strength of domination, the strength of remaining present, the strength of allowing uncertainty without becoming careless, the strength of caring deeply without trying to possess, the strength of grieving without turning grief into the whole identity, the strength of acting wisely and releasing the outcome. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. Perhaps the old way was reacting immediately. Now you breathe. Perhaps the old way was chasing approval. Now you listen to your conscience. Perhaps the old way was carrying everyone's emotions. Now you return responsibility to its rightful owner. Perhaps the old way was waiting for peace to arrive after every problem ended. Now you practice peace in the middle of an unfinished life. Outside, evening light fades slowly. A road becomes quiet. A cup of tea cools beside the window. Somewhere, a temple bell sounds once and disappears into the distance. The bell does not try to hold its own sound. It rings fully. Then it releases. This is not defeat. This is its nature. Your heart also has things it can no longer carry. Old arguments, impossible guarantees, the need to be understood by everyone, the belief that worry can protect the people you love, the demand that life follow the plan you created years ago. Letting go does not mean you never reach for anything again. It means you stop holding what is cutting your hands. It means you act where action is possible. You rest where action is not. You learn from the past without living inside it. You care for the future without abandoning the present. And when the mind reaches again for control, as it often will, you return gently. To the breath, to the body, to the one honest action in front of you, to the ordinary room where life is already happening. Not perfectly, not permanently, but here. Peace is practiced in moments like these. Awareness changes the direction of a life one response at a time. And letting go is not giving up. It is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.